Hello students, in the last lecture we studied cell theory. In today's lecture we will have an overlook of the cell and then we will discuss another point, that is size and shapes of the cell. Now in an overview of the cell we will just see the different types of structures that are present on and inside the cells. For example, you must have studied a plant cell in the form of onion peel cell. I guess you studied this in your 9th standard as one of the practical, and where you studied onion peel cell and human chick cell under the microscope. So in case of any plant cell, for example onion peel cell, the cell has an outer covering in the form of a cell wall. If these are two onion peel cells for example, then this outer covering is the cell wall, which is generally made up of cellulose in most of the plants. And in addition to cellulose, there are some other components also which are present in the cell walls of the plants, but we will see the details of these additional components and the overall structure of the cell wall, and we will study these parts in depth later on. Okay. Now, inside the cell wall, there is a membrane, and that membrane is generally called as a plasma membrane or cell membrane. And the plasma membrane or the cell membrane is generally made up of lipids and proteins. And in few cells, actually in most of the cells, the amount of carbohydrate, little amount of carbohydrates is also present in the cell, but the amount of carbohydrate is very little, less than 0.1%. That is why we generally don't consider the carbohydrates in the structure of plasma membrane. Otherwise they are present in most of the cells, but the most part of the cell membrane or plasma membrane is made up of lipids and proteins. Okay, for example, if we take the example of RBCs, human red blood cells, then they are made up of almost 52% of the proteins and approximately 50% amount of the lipids and very little amount of the carbohydrates. Okay, but the plasma membrane is also present in the animal cell. Plasma membrane is the outermost delimiting structure in the case of animal cells, because animal cells, they don't have cell wall. Cell wall is absent in the animal cells. So in case of plant cells, the outermost layer actually is the cell wall, and in case of animal cells, the outermost layer is the plasma membrane. But plasma membrane is present in every cell, whether it is prokaryotic bacterial cell or it is any animal cell or if it is any plant cell. In every cell plasma membrane is present, and the main function of the plasma membrane is the transport of micro and macro molecules like amino acids, etc., and proteins also outside the cell and inside the cell. Cell के अंदर and बाहर molecules, ions, इनको मतलब nutrient molecules and ions इनको transport करने का काम plasma membrane का होता है. But in addition to that, there are several other functions of plasma membrane also. We will discuss other functions of plasma membrane and its detailed structure when we will talk about especially on the plasma membrane later on. Okay, here we are just having an overview of every structure present in and on of the cell. Now the next part that is present in eukaryotic cells is the nucleus. Nucleus is a membrane bound dense structure, and this structure is dense or densely observed under the microscope, because we generally stain the cell when we see it under the microscope. And when we stain the cell and observe it under the microscope, this nucleus takes large amount of stain, and that is why it occurs as a dense membrane bound organelle under the microscope inside the cell. And if the nucleus is present in a particular cell, then that particular cell is called as eukaryotic. Caryon का मतलब होता है nucleus and U का मतलब होता है true. So if a particular cell possesses true nucleus, a well-developed nucleus, then it is called as eukaryotic cell. And if the cell does not possess a well-developed nucleus, then it is called a prokaryotic cell. Okay, so based on the presence and absence of a well-developed nucleus, we study cells as eukaryotic and prokaryotic. And what does this nucleus basically contain? It contains the chromosomes in eukaryotic cells, and these chromosomes in turn, they contain the DNA. Chromosomes are made up of DNA, proteins, and little amount of RNAs also. But the most important component of chromosomes is DNA, which possesses genes, and those genes are expressed to produce the phenotypes or the traits of the organisms. Okay, so this is about nucleus. Then the next part of the cell is this cytoplasm. Okay, so cytoplasm is a liquid filled matrix inside the cell, and this is a main area or arena of most of the biochemical reactions. बट इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि सारे बायोकेमिकल रिएक्शंस साइटोप्लाज्म के अंदर ही होते हैं. कुछ बायोकेमिकल रिएक्शंस न्यूक्लियस के अंदर होते हैं, कुछ बायोकेमिकल रिएक्शंस अदर ऑर्गेनेल्स के अंदर होते हैं, जैसे गोल्गी कॉम्प्लेक्स, एंडोप्लाज्मिक रेटिकुलम, माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया, फोटोसिंथेसिस. यू मस्ट हैव स्टडीड दैट क्लोरोप्लास्ट के अंदर फोटोसिंथेसिस होता है. देन यू मस्ट आल्सो हैव स्टडीड दैट माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया के अंदर टीसीए साइकिल होता है, ऑक्सीडेशन ऑफ फैटी एसिड्स होता है, एक्सेट्रा. सो दीज आर डिफरेंट ऑर्गेनेल्स जिनके अंदर भी कुछ बायोकेमिकल रिएक्शंस होते हैं. बट द मेन एरिया ऑफ द बायोकेमिकल रिएक्शंस इज द साइटोप्लाज्म, जिसके अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा बायोकेमिकल रिएक्शंस होते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ग्लाइकोलाइसिस, दैट इज डिग्रेडेशन ऑफ ग्लूकोज into two molecules of pyruvate with the release of some amount of energy, that also occurs in the cytoplasm. And cytoplasm also harbors the enzymes for the synthesis of proteins, and in addition to that, several thousands of different reactions also occur in the cytoplasm. We will study all these reactions when we will study the plant physiology, when we will study the photosynthesis, respiration chapters, etc. The next part of the cell is different membrane-bound organelles. For example, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, mitochondria, different types of plastids like chloroplast, chromoplast, leucoplast, etc. And some other organelles like peroxisomes, lysosomes, vacuoles, etc. I haven't written all the membrane-bound organelles here, but there are several membrane-bound organelles which are also the sites of different biochemical reactions, and they are very important constituents of the eukaryotic cells. The membrane-bound organelles are not present in prokaryotes, that is in bacteria. They are completely lacking all the membrane-bound organelles. मतलब in bacteria, nucleus and all these organelles, they are completely absent, and all the reactions basically occur either in the cytoplasm or on the plasma membrane of the bacterial cells. And then finally we have ribosomes and centrioles, which are non-membrane bound organelles of the eukaryotic cells. Ribosomes are also present in prokaryotes also, but centrioles are not present in prokaryotes. Ribosomes are present in every cell, like plasma membrane. Ribosomes are the part of every prokaryotic and every eukaryotic cell. And these ribosomes, they are not covered by any membrane, that is why called as non-membrane bound organelles, but they are very important for protein synthesis, because all the proteins inside the cells, they are synthesized by the ribosomes with the help of obviously other types of molecules like mRNAs, transfer RNAs, etc. And the ribosomes of prokaryotes and eukaryotes are little bit different in size. The function of both the ribosomes is same, that is protein synthesis, but the size of prokaryotic and eukaryotic ribosomes differs. The prokaryotic ribosomes are smaller and are called as 70S ribosomes. The eukaryotic ribosomes are larger in comparison to the prokaryotic ribosomes, and they are called as 80S ribosomes. And why they are called as 70S and 80S, that also we will discuss later on. And here the next organelle that we are going to discuss in brief is the centriole, which is present only in animal cells, and it is not present even in the plant cells. It is also absent in the bacteria, that is prokaryotes. And the main function of these non-membrane bound organelles in animals is the formation of spindles during the process of cell division. Okay, आप लोगों ने पढ़ा होगा कि सेल डिवीजन के टाइम स्पिंडल फाइबर्स बनते हैं, and these spindle fibers are responsible for the segregation of chromosomes from each other. तो ये जो spindle fibers होते हैं, they are basically made up of microtubules, and all these spindle fibers, they are formed from the centriole, okay, which are present only in animal cells. So this is just an overview of a typical plant cell, a typical animal cell. We will discuss all these structures in very depth in 1 or 2 more lectures. Presently, we have to study the next point, that is the cell size and cell shape. We will see that in few minutes. Okay students, so now we have to discuss about the shapes and the size, actually the sizes first and then the shapes of the cells. So in case of sizes, the sizes of the cells vary from cell to cell. They are not constant for each cell, and you can see the bacteria or the mycoplasmas, which are the prokaryotes, the primitive cells, they have the smallest cell size. In prokaryotes, there are bacteria also, and there are some organisms like mycoplasmas also. Mycoplasmas lack cell walls, and that is why in comparison to bacteria, they are smaller in size. So in prokaryotes also, bacteria are relatively larger than mycoplasma, and mycoplasma are smaller. Actually, they are the smallest organisms present on the earth as far as the cellular organisms are concerned. Okay, so generally the average size of the mycoplasmas is 0.3 micron meter, but if we see different types of mycoplasma cells, then we will find some mycoplasmas are still smaller than their average size, and one of such mycoplasma, which is called as PPLO, pleuropneumonia like organism, that is PPLO, is only 0.1 micron meter in its size, and that mycoplasma or PPLO is called as Mycoplasma gallisepticum. This is the scientific name of the organism. This is the genus name, Mycoplasma, and gallisepticum is the name of the species. So this species is the smallest organism, only 0.1 micron meter in size. Then उससे थोड़ा सा बड़ा size होता है bacteria का, which are also prokaryotes, and the average bacterial cell size is 3 to 5 micron meter. Okay, and these are the sizes which we cannot see with the help of naked eyes, and under the microscope also they are not very easily observable. Under the light microscope we can observe them easily under the compound light microscope, not on this or under the simple light microscope. So we will need to use the compound light microscope or the electron microscopes to see the smaller sizes of the cells. And then eukaryotic cells are a little bit larger than the prokaryotic cells, but in eukaryotes also the cell size varies from organism to organism. In case of animals, the cell size is smaller than the plant cells. Plant cells are generally larger than animal cells. One of the important human cell, that is RBC, is having 7 micron meter cell size. One of the longest human cell is the nerve cell, and till date the largest single isolated cell that we humans have observed is an egg of ostrich, which is 3 inches without shell and 6 inches with its shell. Okay, so this is the single large isolated, मतलब not associated with the body, ऐसा cell है egg of an ostrich, which is a single cell. हर egg basically single cell होता है, तो ऑस्ट्रिच का ये एक भी सिंगल सेल है, लार्जेस्ट सेल 3 inches without shell and 6 inches with shell. Then finally we have to discuss in today's lecture the shape of the cell, and the shape of the cell also varies from cell to cell, and basically the shape of the cell is a function of the function of the cell. मतलब the shape is determined based on the function of the cell. For example, human RBCs are round and biconcave. The reason for this type of shape is the function of the cell. So RBCs का function होता है to transport the oxygen throughout the body, okay, with the help of hemoglobin proteins that are present in the RBCs. तो ऑक्सीजन ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा RBC सेल के अंदर आए when the RBCs get oxygenated in the lung region. इसलिए सेल सरफेस या सेल का प्लाज्मा मेम्ब्रेन एरिया बहुत बड़ा होना जरूरी है. एंड व्हेन ऑक्सीजन इज डिलीवर्ड टू अदर सेल्स ऑफ द बॉडी फ्रॉम द आरबीसीज, देन आल्सो द सरफेस ऑफ द सेल शुड बी लार्जर सो दैट ऑक्सीजन इज वेरी एफिशिएंटली टेकन इन द आरबीसीज एंड गिवन आउट ऑफ द आरबीसीज फॉर अदर सेल्स. दैट इज व्हाई डिपेंडिंग ऑन इट्स फंक्शन, दैट इज ऑक्सीजन ट्रांसपोर्ट, द शेप ऑफ द आरबीसीज इज राउंड एंड biconcave. Then depending on the function of the WBCs, their shape also varies. Different types of WBCs are different types of cells. WBCs are the soldiers of our body. They fight against infectious agents like viruses, bacteria, fungi which attack on our body. तो इनके अगेंस्ट डिफेंड करने के लिए ये WBCs काम करते हैं, एंड उनके अलग अलग फंक्शंस होते हैं अलग अलग WBCs के. फॉर एग्जांपल, वन ऑफ द WBC which is called as B lymphocyte is responsible for the synthesis of antibodies. T lymphocytes directly kill the viruses or the virus infected cells and bacteria also. So, and some of the cells that are involved, some of the WBCs that are involved in engulfing the viruses, bacteria, etc., and then digesting and killing them. So for those different types of functions, they are having different types of shells. Their shapes are not constant actually, and these shapes are irregular, constantly changing shapes, and that is why they are referred as irregular or amoeboid shapes of the WBCs. Then epithelial cells, for example, there are different epithelia present in our body. So as far as intestinal epithelial cells are concerned, they are columnar or tubular in shape. Then these are the tracheids which are present in plants. They are involved in the transport of water and the minerals, and they are one of the important component of the xylems of the plants. So plant के xylem में vessels होते हैं and tracheids भी होते हैं. तो trachid इस तरीके से elongated and tapering cells होते हैं. They are tapering at the two ends, and this function of these cells, the shape of these cells is also based on their function. That is, they have to conduct water along the length of the plant. इसलिए इनका shape elongated and tapering होता है. Okay, and we have mesophyll cells of plants as a variation in the cell shape. उनका shape generally round या oval होता है because they are again involved in the process of photosynthesis. मतलब एक important function उनको करना होता है absorption of the light and the process of photosynthesis. तो लाइट एब्जॉर्प्शन मैक्सिमम हो जाए, इसलिए उनका भी सरफेस एरिया मैक्सिमम होना चाहिए. दैट इज व्हाई दे आर जनरली राउंड इन शेप. ओके, एंड वन मोर सेल और फ्यू मोर सेल्स वी कैन डिस्कस हियर. द nerve cells in the case of humans, they are branched, okay, and they are very long cells. At one end they have axon, at other ends they have dendrites, and the main cell body is also present between the axons and the dendrites. So there are different dendrites and they are having branches. So some cells like human nerve cells, they have branched structure also. Their shape is quite different from other cells. Then there are muscle cells which are also elongated and tubular cells. Okay, so based on the functions of the cells, the shapes of the cells vary. Okay, in today's lecture we will stop here, and in the next lecture we will discuss about the structure of the prokaryotic cell in detail. Okay, thank you.